99 Gowns and a Strategy. How I wrecked his empire to save my own life. I dated a tycoon for 6 years. We planned 99 commitment ceremonies. Guess how many times I became a bride? 0. Every time his brittle bookkeeper, Grace, tripped or got misplaced, he shot off faster than a freighter leaving London. So this time, I'm done playing. I disappeared. And guess what? He lost his mind. It was our 99th ceremony attempt. The venue was a private cruiser anchored off the coast of Cape Victory. A white carpet stretched across the back deck, and in the distance, the statue of Fortitude stood quietly over the Sapphire Strait. This time, there were no invitations, no friends, just a few close relatives who treated the whole affair more like a formality than a celebration. A few days before, I had been ambushed during a family meeting by one of Oliver's old rivals. I escaped alone, twisting my ankle in the process. It was still swollen, but I pushed through and confirmed the final sequence of vows with the celebrant. Oliver didn't seem to care. He hadn't visited the bridal suite, hadn't looked at my foot. He spent the entire pre-ceremony break crouched in the captain's lounge, carefully wrapping a bandage around Grace's toe that she had scraped while boarding the cruiser. He gently held her foot and blew over the wound as if she were a frightened animal. Across the deck, my mother watched with a stormy expression. "He never did that for you," she said quietly. "This isn't a wedding. It's still a humiliation." I put on the same cream silk gown that had waited for me through 98 failed ceremonies. At sunset, I stood at the stern of the cruiser, waiting for Oliver to walk me down the Isle of Orcas. Minutes passed. He never came. When I approached the captain's lounge, 2 armed guards blocked my way. "The boss has an urgent matter to attend to," one said. "What urgent matter?" I asked. The door opened. Oliver came out supporting Grace. His face was tense with worry. "Her foot is infected," he said. "I need to take her to the emergency room. Let's put this on hold. Once she feels better, I'll be completely yours." He didn't even look at me. He just helped her into the seaplane. That year marked our 6th anniversary. It was also the 99th time he canceled our ceremony because of Grace. In the past, I would have collapsed, screamed, begged. But this time, I just smiled weakly. "Sure, Grace's foot can't wait." He stopped, surprised by my calm. "When I return, I'll bring you fresh tulips," he said. But I had never liked tulips. I once had an allergy attack at a banquet due to tulip pollen. He had panicked. He had taken me to the clinic and promised me he would never forget. Apparently, even that didn't last 6 years. The seaplane rose into the sky, fluttering my veil and lifting orchid petals from the deck. I turned to look at the guests. "The ceremony is canceled," I announced. Then I raised the scissors in my hand and cut the white satin gown I had worn 99 times. The white satin fell around me like a silent funeral. I looked at the empty sky where the seaplane had disappeared and whispered, "Oliver, 6 years of waiting ends here, just like this dress." It wasn't until the end that my mother finally spoke. "Honey, come back with us to Manchester." She had said it before, but this time it sounded different. Sitting on the edge of the cruiser's deck, I looked up and found her hopeful eyes. The truth was that my father was the patriarch of the largest trading consortium in Manchester. I had been raised in his inner circle, prepared to inherit the business someday. But when I went to college, I met Oliver. I left everything behind and followed him to Victory, a city of greed and betrayal. Oliver came from nothing and hated anyone mentioning his past. I never told him the truth. To him, I was just a girl from a struggling neighborhood. For 6 years, I worked my way up in a consortium, from a simple position to a seat at the main table. People called us a lethal duo, ruthless in business, unstoppable in love. I once thought I would tell him who I really was, but that moment never came. Now it no longer mattered. "I'll be back, don't worry," she said. "We won't let you suffer again." Back in the apartment I shared with Oliver, everything felt empty. I made a pot of rice and opened social feed. Grace had posted a photo. She wore a tight dress, clinging to Oliver, smiling as if the world belonged to her. The caption, "I tricked the stoic chairman into playing chess. I promised him spicy shrimp at my house, and he said yes." I immediately knew he wouldn't come home as always. Fortunately, we had never processed a legal certificate. The next morning, I packed my things and went to headquarters. I handed in my resignation to the regional director in charge. "You're one of the best," he said with sharp instincts. "Reliable. Don't throw this away." As he spoke, Oliver walked in. He had visible scratches on his neck. He reeked of that same sweet perfume. I remember how he used to hate marks. He said they ruined his image. Turns out he didn't hate marks. It was that I left them. The director turned to him. "Perfect timing, boss. Talk to your girlfriend. She's quitting. Did you fight again?" "It has nothing to do with him," I said firmly. Oliver's eyes fixed on mine. "Is this because I canceled the ceremony again?" The director felt the tension and left quietly. Oliver stepped forward, his voice rougher. "Now, I told you Grace hurt her foot. That's all." "I'm not angry," I replied. "I'm just exhausted. I need a break in a new place." "If you're tired, take a vacation," he said. "But don't leave the consortium. Now people will think Grace caused it. How is she supposed to maintain her position?" He didn't care about me, just Grace's image. I didn't answer. I looked at the scratch again. He noticed and raised his hand to cover it. "It's just a bug bite," he muttered. I almost laughed. He wrapped an arm around my shoulders. "There we go. No more drama. I'll take you to dinner at the Spire. Let's make peace." "Okay." I said nothing. He mistook my silence for agreement. But I had already decided I wasn't going to say goodbye. I was leaving Victory forever. "Oliver." Grace burst in without knocking. "Oops," she laughed. "I didn't mean to interrupt. I just need help with this financial report." Oliver immediately turned to her. She approached, whispering, intertwining her arm with his. As they left, leaving the door open long enough for her to throw me a smug smile. The room fell silent. The steel watch on my wrist slipped, the one Oliver gave me on our first anniversary. "Strong as titanium," he had said. I stared at it for a long time. Then I threw it in the trash along with everything I still felt for him. I left the city before dawn. No note, no message, no dramatic goodbye, just silence. The last thing I did was withdraw the funds from the locked drawer behind the bookshelf. Not Oliver's money, mine. Every unit of currency I had earned in the last 6 years. I had kept it separate for a reason I hadn't understood until now. Maybe I had always known I would need an escape. By 8 in the morning, I was gone. No one saw me leave. No guard questioned me in Victory. Everyone assumes that if you walk like you belong, you do. I slipped into a discreet car with tinted windows and a trunk full of memories I never wanted to unpack again. The trip to Manchester took 5 hours. I didn't turn on the radio. The silence was enough. Along the road, green hills passed like waves, and with each mile between Oliver and me, I felt my lungs expand. For the first time in years, I could breathe. When I arrived at the estate, 2 guards dressed in black greeted me at the door. "Welcome home, Miss Emma." It had been years since anyone called me that. Inside, the mansion was just as I remembered. Tall columns, dark mahogany windows reflecting both sunlight and secrets. My father was at the top of the stairs, flanked by advisors and senior managers. His face remained indecipherable, but his eyes softened the moment he saw me. "It was time," he said simply. I climbed the stairs, one slow step at a time. At the top, he extended his hand. Extended. I took it, and with that, I returned to the world I had abandoned. "Your room has been kept as it was," he said, "although I imagine you won't rest much." He was right. I wasn't here to hide. That night, the heads of the 5 core businesses gathered in the East Wing for a dinner in my honor. It wasn't a warm affair. It was a statement. She's back, and she's no longer just a tycoon's girlfriend waiting for a broken promise. I wore black. No makeup, no jewelry, just the faintest trace of the scars that 6 years had left behind. They didn't ask questions. They didn't need to. In this world, silence is louder than betrayal. "Are you ready to reclaim your seat?" asked Mr. Cyrus, drinking from a crystal glass. I nodded. Yes, but not just my seat. I want control of the northern depots, and I want total oversight of the southern supply chain. There was a pause. Sharp eyes turned to my father. He nodded with a single movement. Granted. No more shadows, no more sidelines. I was done being secondary to a man who never saw me. By morning, I was already in the field. Professional attire, hand-signing contracts, voice-inspiring respect. The documents bowed to me once again, and whispers began. The consortium heir is back, and this time, she's not smiling. Back in Victory, Oliver noticed. It started with missed calls, then text messages. "Are you safe? Why did you tell me you were leaving, Emma? This isn't like you." On the 3rd day, he sent someone to check my apartment. Of course, I was no longer there. All that remained was the empty closet and the lingering smell of betrayal. Then came the message I had been waiting for. "I miss you." I read it once. I deleted it. I didn't miss him. I missed who he pretended to be. Weeks passed. Manchester prospered. My supply chains grew faster and cleaner. I restructured finances, eradicated 2 corrupt junior managers, and doubled profits in less than a month. At night, I stood by the window looking at the stars. I didn't cry. I didn't drink. I planned. Until one night, I received a gift. A small velvet box. No sender. Inside was a pair of sapphire earrings I had once admired at a gala. A note underneath that said, "I remember." I left the box and smiled, because it was working. Oliver never chased anyone he commanded, but now he was falling apart, because he had finally done the one thing he never expected. I left first. 2 days later, a man arrived at the estate, alone. No weapons, just a sealed envelope for Emma. He said, bowing. I opened it. Inside, an invitation handwritten with Oliver's signature at the bottom. Dinner. No guards, no excuses, just us. I showed it to my father. He frowned. It could be a trap. I know, I replied, but I want him to think I'm still accessible. Are you? I looked him in the eyes. No. Still, I accepted. I arrived at the restaurant 10 minutes late. Oliver was already there, alone, true to his word. He stood when he saw me, his eyes scanning my face as if searching for a familiar detail that no longer existed. "You cut your hair," he said. "Yes." "Does it look good?" I didn't answer. We sat down. The table was set for 2. Candles flickered between us. A string quartet played in the background. He had reserved the entire place. "You disappeared." "You left me," he sighed. "I didn't know it had gone so far. It wasn't just Grace." "I know." He leaned forward. 6 years, Emma. We built everything together. You can't just leave like that." "I didn't leave. I fled. And for good reason. I made mistakes. You made decisions. Over and over again." He lowered his gaze. For the first time, he had no words. I sipped water. "Why did you call me here?" He hesitated. "Because I still love you." I let that sink in. Then I stood up. "You love having someone who never says no, who waits, who sacrifices. But that woman is gone, and in her place is someone who finally understands her worth. I placed a small silver coin on the table, the Trading Consortium shield. I'm not going back to you, Oliver. I'm going to recover everything you thought I gave up, and I'm going to start with the northern depots. His eyes widened. Those are mine. Not anymore. He stood up too, his voice lowered. This is war. I smiled coldly. No, Oliver. This is closure. And I left. As I exited the restaurant, the night air wrapped around me like armor. In the distance, I could hear the faint sound of waves breaking. Victory had just lost its queen, and Manchester had recovered its heiress. I never looked back, not even when I heard him say my name, because this time I wasn't waiting. I was building an empire without him. 2 weeks after our final confrontation in Victory, the first blow came. A tech components shipment bound for the northern depots disappeared halfway through. No shots, no trace, just silence. It was too clean to be a random robbery. It was a message. Oliver had decided to fight. Good, because I was done shrinking. That morning, I called an emergency meeting at the Manchester estate. The room filled quickly. Managers, security chiefs, advisors, old allies, new faces. I stood at the head of the table, calm, controlled, lethal. We lost a shipment last night, I said. It was diverted by someone with high-level access. Victory, someone murmured. I nodded. This isn't a guessing game. It was Oliver. He wants to test our response. The room tensed. Some looked uneasy. Oliver still had influence. He still inspired fear. He trained you, said Elias, an old loyalist. He knows your moves. He trained a version of me that no longer exists, I replied. And they believed me because I had changed. After the meeting, I went to the vault room and opened a drawer marked with a single name. Project Clarity. Inside were documents, blueprints, surveillance records, plans. I had started them long ago when I first noticed Oliver's divided loyalty. I had never used them until now. I spread the files on the marble table and began moving the pieces. Oliver thought he was facing the woman who once waited for him at the docks and in Victory Suites. But he was wrong. He was facing the daughter of a patriarch who had taught her to lead armies without raising a single weapon. Over the next 5 days, I secured the southern supply chain. I replaced the security system at all major ports. Personnel reassignment. Every guard who had accepted a bribe was fired. Every route was randomized. Then I made my move. A routine delivery to Cape Victory was altered. 2 hours late, different container numbers, diverted personnel. I knew Oliver would notice, and he did. When the decoy shipment arrived, his men hijacked it as expected, but instead of tech components, the boxes contained sandbags and GPS trackers. The moment the shipment crossed Victory City line, I pressed a button on my phone. Dozens of text messages were activated to police contacts, journalists, rival firms. I signed them anonymously, of course, but the fallout was like thunder. Word spread that Oliver's firm had been caught stealing worthless cargo. Videos were leaked showing his men struggling to unload bags while sirens wailed in the background. It wasn't about the money. It was about humiliation. The next day, he called me. Do you want at war, Emma? You have it. Click. I didn't flinch. Instead, I organized a gala for the outside world. It was a celebration of Manchester's legacy. For those inside, it was a display of power. I wore a fitted black suit and walked through the ballroom with my head high. People looked at me in awe. The girl who was once in a man's shadow was now the storm. He couldn't contain. A man approached with a glass of wine. Miss Emma, congratulations. The depots have never run so well. Thank you. He smiled. Some say you're provoking Oliver too much, that you should have left quietly. I sipped the wine and replied, if I had left quietly, I wouldn't be here to toast my victory. That night, under the crystal chandeliers, I felt no remorse because I had given Oliver everything, and he had made me into this. A week later, I received another surprise. A package arrived with no return address. Inside was a red velvet box. I opened it cautiously. Inside was a steel dart engraved with the word loyalty. There was no note. I didn't need one. It was his way of saying I had broken something sacred. I didn't deny it, because loyalty given blindly isn't loyalty. It's slavery. And I had freed myself. But I knew what came next. He wouldn't just attack my business. He would go after people. And I had to be ready. So I visited the woman I had once ignored for years. Amelia, my cousin. We had grown up together, trained together. But she had always been secondary to me, eclipsed. I had left her behind when I followed Oliver to victory, but now I needed her. She opened the door in a simple blouse, holding a wrench. Emma, I came to apologize. She blinked. For which part? The years of silence or the fact that you only show up when you need something? Both. She leaned against the doorframe, then stepped aside. Come in. We sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by scattered blueprints and tools. I need someone I trust, I said. Someone who remembers who I was before all this. And now that you've burned victory to the ground, you want me by your side? I want you with me before the fire spreads here. She studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. I'm in. We spent the next 3 nights assembling a team. All women, all overlooked by the old guard. Cunning, silent, lethal. We called them the Rejects. Each had a story, a betrayal, a scar, and each had sworn never to be underestimated again. With them, I reclaimed 3 warehouses that Oliver's men had secretly controlled. I cut their surveillance systems, exposed their accountant for laundering funds through phantom charities. And every time I made a move, I left a single business card. 6 years, 99 ceremonies, no bride. He understood what it meant. It was personal. One night, I received another call. This time, it was from my mother. Your father wants to talk to you. I entered his study an hour later. He was by the fireplace, his hands clasped behind his back. You're becoming a force, but you're also becoming a target. I know. You should end this before it becomes something you can't escape from. I don't plan to escape. He turned. Do you love him? I loved who he pretended to be. What if there's still a part of him that's real? Then he should have shown it before I became a weapon. There was a long silence. Then he said quietly, End it cleanly, Emma. Don't become what you tried to destroy. I didn't answer because part of me already knew it was too late. Oliver had crossed lines that couldn't be undone, and I had built a machine that wouldn't stop until it ran out of fuel or enemies. 3 days later, I got news that Grace had left the country. Why? I asked. The informant shrugged. No one knows. Some say she broke under pressure. Others say Oliver sent her for her safety. I didn't believe either. Grace had always been a strategist. If she left, it was because she saw what was coming. And what was coming was something neither she nor Oliver could stop because I had already written the final chapter. And in it, I didn't need to become a bride. I needed to become a legend. I received the photo at 3 a.m. No text, no caption, just the image. Oliver standing in front of the Manchester Hall of Commerce in broad daylight, hands in pockets, unfazed, confident, with a half-smile on his face as if he owned the world. Below the photo, scribbled in ink, "Come home, we were better together." I stared at it for a long time. Then I turned off my phone. But the next day, he made his message louder. 3 of my senior managers were arrested. During a routine inspection at the Southern supply chain, police found enough planted evidence to keep them locked up for months. I had seen that trick before. Oliver had taught it to me. He was getting bold, which meant he was getting desperate. Later that afternoon, Amelia burst into my office. She had a tablet in her hand. "He made a public statement," she said. "Watch this." She played the video. Oliver was behind a podium, surrounded by fake charity banners and flashing cameras. His voice was calm, rehearsed. "I've always believed in second chances, in forgiveness. Some people build walls, others build bridges. I choose to build." He looked directly at the camera. "And to the one person who taught me what loyalty meant, I hope you come back. There's still time to stop this war before it burns. Everything we built." He had polished the story. He made himself look noble, repentant, as if I were the one destroying peace, as if I had started this. I almost admire the performance. Almost. Amelia narrowed her eyes. "He's turning it around, making you the villain." "Let him," I said. "The real moves are already in motion." That night, I met with the logistics team. We tracked all of Oliver's shipments through Victory's underground route. For years, he had smuggled luxury goods through a furniture import business. It was brilliant, until now. We intercepted one truck, then another, diverted them, took the cargo, sent the drivers back, unharmed but shaken. I wanted Oliver to know I could have finished them, but chose not to. He needed to understand that mercy isn't the same as weakness. 3 days later, he responded. I came home to find my apartment ransacked. Not the Manchester mansion, my old one in Victory, which I hadn't returned to in weeks. I had left one thing behind, a small notebook full of financial projections I had written when I first fell in love with him. He burned it. The ashes were scattered on my bed. On the wall, spray-painted, were the words, "Queen of Nothing." I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. Instead, I sat among the ruins and wrote my final move. I called a meeting of all the heads of the Southern syndicates. They arrived that night, each with their own guards, each curious and cautious. We met in the Great Hall, previously used for coronation dinners. This time, it was war. I propose a merger, I announced. A new alliance. No more titles, no more thrones, a single alliance built by all of us, led by vote, not by blood. There was a long silence. Then a rough voice from the back spoke. "And who proposed this, you?" I nodded. "Yes." "Why do you want Oliver gone?" "No," I said calmly. "I want the game to change." They listened because they were tired too. Tired of Oliver's greed, of my father's era, of being pawns in a war built on emotion. By the end of the meeting, 12 firms had signed. The Southern Coast now answered to a council. Not to Oliver, not to me. That night, I walked alone to the cliffs overlooking Victory Bay. The sea was dark. The stars above me twinkled like ghosts of old dreams. Oliver had once brought me here on our first anniversary. We drank wine and kissed under the moonlight, promising never to betray each other. What a lie that turned out to be. I closed my eyes and let him go. The love, the hope, the pieces of me still tied to that memory. Then, I turned around and left the past behind. Back in the city, Oliver was falling apart. His accountant fled to the islands. 2 of his managers defected. Grace was still missing, and rumors claimed she was selling secrets to the highest bidder. He stopped attending meetings. He stopped smiling. He stopped pretending. And then, he sent one last message. A dinner invitation. Not a trap. A peace offering. The card said, "One last dinner. No guards, no lies, just you and me." Amelia said it was foolish. My father said it was suicide. But I went anyway because I needed to see what remained. The place was familiar. A rooftop restaurant where he had once promised me the world with amuse bushes and red wine. It hadn't changed, but we had. Oliver was sitting alone, drinking a glass of something amber. When he saw me, he stood up. His face was thinner, his eyes sunken. You came. I wanted to see what you've become. He gestured to a chair. But she wasn't just using Oliver. She was being paid quarterly by someone else. Who? Summit Holdings. I froze. That's Oliver's front. He shook his head. It used to be. 3 years ago, it was quietly expelled. Shares were sold, silent investors, ghost boards. Someone wanted control without visibility, and Grace was their infiltrator. I took the data chip and left without saying a word. Back at a rundown motel on the outskirts of town, I plugged it into my laptop. Documents, transfers, meeting records. One name kept appearing. James, a discreet financier known for financing political campaigns, art galleries, and private militias. He wasn't a consortium man. He was something worse. A power collector. And now I understood. Grace was never Oliver's assistant. She was James's asset. Her job was to keep Oliver chasing chaos while James took control from below. And me? I was just collateral damage. A woman with too much influence, too much heart. He set us against each other while building an empire in the darkness. I stared at the screen for hours. Then I made a decision. I wasn't going to take the story to the press. I wasn't going to cry or flee or ask for help. I was going to bury James, brick by brick, word by word. And I was going to start by visiting the last person who still had enough rage to light the fuse with me, Oliver. It was past midnight when I arrived at his complex. Half the lights were off. The guards barely looked at me. Inside, he was sitting alone in the study, shirt half unbuttoned, whiskey in hand, eyes lost in something I couldn't see. He looked up when I entered. You came. Don't get used to it. He gestured to the chair across from him. Want a drink? No. He poured anyway. Then I said it. James. He went still. The name pierced something in him. You know I know everything now. He looked at the glass. Then he threw it across the room. It shattered against the fireplace. He used us both. No, he used you. He underestimated me. He laughed bitterly. I underestimated you. Silence. I pulled out the data chip. Here's the proof. Bank transfers, meeting records. Grace's real payroll. He took it, barely blinking. Will I kill him? No, you won't. His head jerked. Because I will. He studied me. You're not the same woman I left waiting on the cruiser. No, I said softly. She died when you boarded that seaplane without looking back. He didn't apologize. I didn't ask him to. Instead, I stood up. I need your help. Once a night, he nodded. Deal. We met the next night at a warehouse near the old tracks. Oliver brought a small team, silent, loyal. I brought Amelia and 2 of the rejects. James was attending an exhibition at a gallery, one of his vanity projects. We didn't bring weapons. We brought the truth, projected throughout the gallery. Every document, every deal, every betrayal. While guests sipped champagne and praised the lighting, emails began scrolling across the ceiling. James pale. Security surrounded him, but it was too late. The board of directors had seen enough. So had his investors. By midnight, James had lost everything. And by morning, he had disappeared. No one knows where he went. Some say he fled to Europe. Others say Oliver found him. I never asked. I didn't care, because justice doesn't always come with a trial. Sometimes it comes with silence. And a woman you thought you had destroyed, standing where you expected ashes. Oliver never tried to kiss me. He never tried to apologize. But when I left the warehouse that night, he said, I should have followed you. The night you cut the dress, I turned around. You should have loved me before. I learned to love myself more. Then I left again. This time not from pain but from power, because I had finally burned the right bridges and didn't need to go back. I disappeared again, not from fear, but in peace. After James's fall, the city buzzed with rumors. Some said he had been executed by a rival firm. Others believed he fled to a private island with a new identity. I knew the truth was somewhere in between, and I had no interest in finding out. He had served his purpose. It reminded me that love without power is a prison, and power without purpose is poison. The day after the exhibition, I returned north to the house by the cliff, to the silence I had earned. I deleted all the old files, every image of Oliver, every voice note I had saved during our 6 years together. And when I finished, I lit a small fire in the fireplace and watched the digital ghosts turn to ashes on the screen. It didn't hurt, not like before. Amelia visited me a week later. She brought wine, fresh bread, and news. "The Southern Alliance is thriving without centralized power," she said, taking off her boots. "Your council idea worked. No blood has been spilled in 35 days. That's on record." I nodded. "Good." "Could you come back?" "I don't want to come back." She studied me in silence. "You say that like you mean it." "Now I do." "Because of Oliver?" "No, because of me." She didn't insist. Instead, we sat on the porch and watched the sea crash against the rocks. Sometime between the second glass and the quiet hour before dawn, she asked the question I had buried deep. "Did you ever really love him?" I thought for a long moment. Then I answered honestly. I loved who I thought he was. I loved the idea that someone could see me completely and still choose to stay. I loved the fairy tale I built in my head more than the man I had in front of me. Amelia leaned back. "We all do that at least once." "And you?" "I loved someone once. He chose someone else. However, I didn't burn cities for him." I smiled weakly. "Your self-control is impressive." We didn't talk about it again. The next morning she left, and I returned to my quiet routine. Almost a month passed before I saw him again. Oliver, standing at the edge of the cliff behind my house like a ghost. He wore black, no guards, no arrogance, just exhaustion and something like sincerity. I didn't call out to him. I left him there. After a while, he turned and saw me leaning against the doorframe. "Did you find me?" He nodded. "I heard you were here. It took me a while to believe it." Distance. Then he asked, "Do you want me to leave?" I didn't answer immediately. Then I said, "That depends on why you came." He walked slowly toward me, stopping at the porch steps. "I wanted to see what you became." "You could have seen the news." "I needed to see it for myself." We fell silent again. The kind of silence that used to feel heavy between us. Now, it simply was. He sat on the steps. I didn't invite him in. He didn't ask. "Everything has changed," he said quietly. "I know. I no longer run the ports. I no longer run anything." "Was it your choice?" "No, but maybe it should have been." He looked at me. "Are you no longer angry?" "No, not at all. I think I exhausted every kind of anger a person can carry. All I have left is clarity." He nodded. "You became what we used to pretend you already were." I stopped pretending. We were silent again. Then he asked, "Do you still love me?" That question should have hurt me. It didn't. I sat across from him. "No," I said honestly. "I love the idea of being chosen. You made me believe that love required sacrifice, that waiting made me strong, but no, it made me small. I never meant to hurt you, but you did." "I know." He ran a hand through his hair. Tired eyes. "I tried to replace you, with grace. I thought if I could protect someone else, maybe I would be worth something. And now? Now I know. I never protected anyone. I was hiding." We sat in silence for several minutes. the waves breaking behind us like background music for a scene. Neither of us knew how to end it. Finally, I stood up. "You're no longer the villain of my story, Oliver." He looked up. "But you're not the ending either." He didn't argue. Instead, he smiled weakly, a sad and grateful smile. "Can I ask one more thing?" "Yes." "Did you ever imagine a future with me that ended differently?" I nodded. "Yes. I used to dream of waking up next to you, coffee on the nightstand, commitment ring on my hand, and peace in my heart. And now I wake up alone and still have peace." He stood up. "I won't come back again." "You don't have to." He walked toward his car. He stopped halfway. Then he turned and said, "You were always stronger than I deserved." And then he left. No dramatic gestures, no promises, just a man who had finally stopped pretending that night. I stood on the cliff and let the wind whip my hair. There were no tears, no regrets, just a truth that lingered. Projections, not love letters. Stories of women who left, of women who burned bridges and built empires from the ashes of recovered loyalty, of broken silence. Every morning, I wrote with a clarity I hadn't felt in years, and little by little, people started finding me. A neighbor who brought fresh tomatoes in exchange for conversation, a teenager who wanted help with an essay on power and gender, a retired fisherman who asked me if I would help him manage his accounts. They didn't know who I was before, they only saw who I was now, and that was finally enough. One afternoon, as the sky burned orange over the water, Amelia called. "You know, the council left your chair open." "I don't want it." "You earned it." "I earned the right to choose." She left. "Fair. Do you want to come visit me next month?" "Maybe." "Oliver's gone. He moved to the mountains. No one has seen him since." "Good." "Are you okay, Emma?" I looked at the sea. "Better than okay." "Then I'll leave you." Click. I lay back, the breeze brushing my skin. This wasn't a fairy tale. This wasn't a revenge story. This was a rebirth. And for the first time in 6 years, I didn't want anything from the past. No apologies, no justice, not even recognition. I just wanted tomorrow. And it was finally mine. Spring came quietly. The waves softened, the skies turned pale blue. Wildflowers climbed the cliffs like a slow applause from nature. It had been 4 months since I last saw Oliver, 2 since I heard Amelia's voice, and exactly 6 weeks since I opened my laptop and sent the final draft of my manuscript. Title: 99 Gowns. It wasn't fiction, but I never said it was a memoir. I changed the names. I left out the blood. I focused on heartbreak and the slow unraveling of a woman who waited at the edge of love until there was nothing left to wait for. I didn't expect it to be accepted, but the email came on a Thursday. "We would be honored to publish your work." No one knew who I was. They only knew the voice on the page. That was enough. And maybe that was the point. To be seen for who I had become, not for what I had survived. I printed the contract, signed it, and placed it in the outgoing mailbox at the local post office. The employee smiled. "Congratulations, Eleanor." It was the first time I didn't flinch at hearing the name. I walked home barefoot, the cold ground anchoring me. When I got to my porch, a car was waiting. Not black, not armored, just a simple silver sedan. Inside was a woman I hadn't seen in almost a decade. Grace. Older now. Thinner. Her hair shorter. She got out with her hand slightly raised as if approaching a wild animal. "I thought you'd shoot me," she said. "You're not worth a bullet." She smiled smugly. "That's fair." I didn't invite her in. We stood at the edge of the porch, the wind pulling at our jackets. "What do you want?" "Not forgiveness." "Good. You wouldn't get it." I came to explain. "You came to ease your conscience. Let's not pretend this is for me." She looked away. "You're always smarter than me." No, I just never underestimated myself like you expected me to. Grace nodded slowly. You were supposed to be a loyal shadow, silent, easy to push aside. You never understood what loyalty costs. Now you do. Do you regret it? She hesitated. Yes, but not because I lost, but because I hurt someone who never deserved to be used. I crossed my arms. So why now? Why come here after all this time? She searched in her coat pocket and pulled out a small object wrapped in velvet. I kept this. I opened it slowly. Inside was a thin silver ring. Simple. Unpolished. A small inscription inside. To my future bride. I stole it, she said. He made it for your 100th ceremony attempt. I stared at the ring for a long moment. Then I placed it on the porch railing and stepped back. Leave it and go. Grace's eyes no longer showed defiance, only guilt. She left without saying a word. When the car disappeared down the road, I stood for a moment looking at the ring. Then I picked it up and threw it over the cliff. I never saw where it landed because I no longer needed to know. The next day, my book went to print. It sold 2,000 copies the first week, 10,000 the third. Book clubs called, podcasts sent emails. Women wrote letters. You told my story. I thought I was the only one waiting. Finally, I left too. I cried reading the letters, not because I was sad, but because I realized my silence had never been power. My voice was. One day, I received a package from an address in the mountains. No name, no note. Inside was a worn photograph, Oliver and I laughing at the rooftop restaurant during the early days, before the lies, before Grace, before the waiting. On the back, he had written 4 words. I remember our laughter. I burned the photo, not out of hatred, but in peace, because the woman in that image was gone, and the woman I had become didn't need proof that it had once been good. I needed freedom, and I had it. A year later, my book became a plague. I sat in the back row on opening night, anonymous, my heart pounding. When the curtain rose, the audience gasped, cried, applauded, and when the actress who played me stood at the edge of the stage in a torn white dress with scissors in her hand and whispered, "This is where it ends, just like the stress." I smiled. They stood up. They applauded. But I didn't bow, because the applause wasn't for me. It was for every woman who had waited too long, for every woman who had freed herself. I walked home under the stars. The theater faded behind me. The wind felt warm. And for the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about Oliver or Grace or betrayal. I was thinking about healing, about the smell of salt and coffee, of unwritten pages and untold stories of what comes after survival. Because this story didn't end in marriage, didn't end in revenge. It ended in recovery. And I would write the next chapter not as a woman who had been broken, but as one who finally knew she never needed to be chosen to matter. That's my story of recovery. The war with Oliver and the betrayal with Grace were just the noise I had to cut through to write my ultimate truth, 99 gowns and a strategy. I found my peace, but what about you? What was the final straw moment that pushed you to change your life? Leave a comment and share your clarity moment below. If this story resonated, hit like and subscribe to follow the unwritten chapters.